Hopefully I don't smell like pickle juice. I'm sorry if I...
I am jet lagged.
In Hollywood, where fame often burns brighter than truth, one name rose from the quiet shadows of a dynasty: Elizabeth Olsen. For years, she was the other Olsen, the quiet sister of two global icons. Cameras chased her family, not her. Headlines spoke her surname, not her soul. But beneath that silence, something powerful was taking shape: discipline, pain, and a hunger for identity. Then one day, the world saw her, not as someone's sister, but as Wanda Maximoff, a woman torn between love and loss, creation and destruction, a superhero, not of muscle, but of grief. How did a girl born into Hollywood's golden cage rewrite her story and become one of the most respected actresses of her generation? This is not just the story of fame. It's the story of breaking free from it, of becoming more than a name, of becoming Elizabeth Olsen. Elizabeth Chase Olsen was born on February 16, 1989, in Sherman Oaks, California, the youngest in a family that already lived under the Hollywood spotlight. Her older twin sisters, Mary-Kate and Ashley, were global sensations before they could even spell their own names. Cameras followed them everywhere. Fame wasn't a dream in the Olsen house. It was the air they breathed. But for Elizabeth, it never felt like hers. While her sisters were building an empire of stardom and fashion, she stayed in the background, the quiet observer, studying, learning, waiting. She wasn't jealous. She was curious. What did fame cost? When her parents divorced, that picture-perfect family began to fracture. Elizabeth found refuge in ballet, theater, and the calm discipline of performance. Unlike the chaos of celebrity, the stage had rules, rhythm, and honesty. As she watched her sisters face the darker side of fame, tabloids, pressure, exhaustion, Elizabeth made a silent promise. If she ever entered Hollywood, it would be on her own terms. She didn't want to be famous. She wanted to be true, and that quiet decision, made by a teenager in the shadow of global stardom, would one day turn her into one of Hollywood's most powerful hearts. When Elizabeth Olsen decided to chase acting, she didn't walk through the golden doors of her family's fame. She started at the bottom. She studied at NYU's Tisch School of the Arts, and later trained at the Moscow Art Theater, where she learned how to strip emotion bare, to make pain honest. While the world expected another celebrity heiress, she was quietly shaping herself into a craftsman. She took small theater roles, independent auditions, anything that felt real. Then came 2011. Her debut in Martha Marcy May, Marlene stunned Hollywood. She played a young woman escaping from a cult, fragile, haunted, yet fiercely alive. The performance was raw, almost uncomfortable to watch. Critics compared her to the likes of Natalie Portman and a young Meryl Streep. In one moment, the world stopped calling her the Olsen sister. They started calling her the Revelation. Elizabeth didn't arrive with glamour. She arrived with truth. And truth in Hollywood is rare. That film didn't just launch her career. It redefined her identity. She wasn't the next anything. She was the first Elizabeth Olsen. And as the applause echoed, the question quietly lingered. How do you protect your soul once the spotlight finally finds it? Hollywood has a way of testing its brightest new stars, and Elizabeth Olsen passed every trial with quiet precision. After her breakout in Martha Marcy May Marlene, she avoided the predictable path. No gossip, no overexposure, just work, patience, and purpose. Then came a call that would change everything. Marvel Studios. In 2015, Elizabeth joined the Marvel Cinematic Universe as Wanda Maximoff, a role that would transform her from indie darling into global phenomenon. At first, she was cautious. "Superheroes aren't really my thing," she once said. But Wanda was different. Wanda was grief, chaos, and love wrapped in one fragile soul. Across Avengers, Age of Ultron, Civil War, Infinity War, and Endgame, audiences watched Olsen's performance deepen, turning comic book spectacle into emotional poetry. And when WandaVision premiered in 2021, everything changed. The series broke boundaries, mixing sitcom nostalgia with existential pain. Elizabeth carried the show with magnetic vulnerability, a woman building a fantasy world just to avoid saying goodbye. Critics called it a masterclass in emotion. Emmy nominations followed. So did Global Obsession. But more than fame, what she earned was respect. Directors began calling her the actor's actor. Fans saw her not as a Marvel star, but as the beating heart of the universe itself. Elizabeth Olsen didn't chase the spotlight. She became the light. And in that glow, she found both power and pressure. Because in Hollywood every rise carries a shadow, and hers was coming. For every bright light in Hollywood, there's a shadow waiting to be cast. And for Elizabeth Olsen, that shadow was her own last name. No matter how far she went, headlines still tied her to her sisters, the billion-dollar Olsen twins. The media painted her as the grounded one, the serious one, or the third Olsen. They meant it as praise, but to Elizabeth it was a cage, invisible, polite, and suffocating. Then came the pressure of WandaVision's success. Fans demanded more, Marvel wanted bigger, and the internet never stopped watching. Every interview, every outfit, every quote became a headline dissected by millions. The world adored Wanda, but began confusing her with Elizabeth. Behind the scenes, she struggled with exhaustion and anxiety. She spoke softly about mental health, but her calm tone hid a storm. There were rumors that she wanted to quit Marvel, that she was done with fame. But the truth was simpler and far heavier. She was tired of being seen, but not known. In one interview, she said quietly, "I love what I do, but I don't want it to own me." It wasn't rebellion. It was survival. So Elizabeth did the unthinkable for a Hollywood star. She stepped back. No scandal, no meltdown, just silence. And in that silence, she found herself again. Because sometimes, the loudest rebellion in Hollywood is to walk away. After the noise faded, Elizabeth Olsen chose something Hollywood rarely allows: peace. She traded red carpets for quiet gardens, interviews for introspection. While others chased the next blockbuster, she focused on grounding herself, therapy, family, and the joy of doing nothing. Then, when the world least expected it, she returned. But not as the same woman. Her comeback in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, 2022, was more than a role. It was a reckoning. Wanda Maximoff was no longer a victim of grief. She was its embodiment. Elizabeth poured her own silence, fear, and self-discovery into every frame. Her performance blurred the line between hero and villain, love and obsession. It wasn't about redemption. It was about acceptance, and audiences felt it. They didn't just see Scarlet Witch. They saw Elizabeth Olsen, an artist who had faced her own chaos and turned it into beauty. Beyond Marvel, she became an advocate for mental health, women in film, and the right to live beyond fame. She didn't reinvent herself to please the world. She did it to protect her soul. In an industry that devours its own, Elizabeth Olsen chose to heal. And somehow, that made her shine brighter than ever. Elizabeth Olsen never wanted to be a star. She wanted to be honest. And maybe that's why she became something even greater. Her legacy isn't measured in box office numbers or magazine covers. It lives in the quiet power of her performances, in the trembling voice of Martha, in the silent tears of Wanda, in the way she made grief look like art. She proved that vulnerability isn't weakness. It's the raw material of strength. In an industry obsessed with perfection, Elizabeth reminded Hollywood that truth is still the most dangerous and beautiful performance of all. She stood in the same spotlight that once belonged to her sisters, yet somehow she turned it into her own sun. Her story isn't just about fame. It's about finding freedom. In silence, in art, in self-acceptance. Because in the end, Elizabeth Olsen taught the world something simple and profound. You don't need to be the loudest voice in the room to be the most powerful one. The journey of Elizabeth Olsen proves that strength doesn't come from the spotlight, It comes from the courage to step out of it.